Oh, Planning Commission, I'm sorry, Mike.
The Planning Commission met last evening and had a presentation on Stocking Works 2. Everyone knows it to be the new development proposed for the Stockburger site on South State Street. Since the last appearance by the developer some months ago, there has been a sale of the Stockburger property to the west side of State Street, that is to say, the current showroom, auto body shop, and surrounding paved areas. I want to make clear the auto service location across the street and the parking area adjacent to the Friends meeting on Court Street were not part of that purchase, we are advised, and will not be part of the project going forward. At the meeting last evening, Alan Smith and architect Robert Hillier reviewed the recent process of plan revision for the project, which remains a mixed use, which is to say it's a mixture of residential in the nature of condominiums, along with office space and retail. A parking structure remains an important part of the proposal. I will stress, however, that we learned one of the parts of the revision is that there is more residential in this current version of the plan than office space, and that's a difference from the last review we had some months ago. A significant change from the last plan is also the proposed relocation of the Pennsylvania State Store from its current location set back from Center Avenue at the Borough parking lot to a new location on South State Street near the current Stockburger showroom. So if you think about that, that'll give you an idea of one of the principal changes in the new plan. A lot of time was, well, I won't say a lot, a fair amount of time was devoted to questions about parking and traffic, as it was the last time around. Simply put, there is a very, very shared desire on the part of the Planning Commission and the developer to have the project improve parking for the downtown district overall, and also, very importantly, for traffic to be addressed. The Planning Commission and the developer are in agreement that these concerns, particularly the traffic, should be analyzed now in the beginning stages of the project as opposed to later. The developer is retaining its own expert for traffic impact studies, the results of which will be available when the plan is still in its formative or early stages. And the borough will move forward separately with examining parking within the business district in a further effort to understand the implications of the parking structure which is being proposed. And that's particularly important because, as you may recall, the surface parking in front of the State Store on Center will be no more. And the parking structure is intended to incorporate on the very first floor those lost spaces. The Planning Commission, fortunately, has continued to work on the so-called TND ordinance. That's the traditional neighborhood development ordinance. Notwithstanding the fact the old Stockburgers project, or Stocking Works 2, stopped in its tracks some months ago, the work on the ordinance did continue. So that zoning ordinance, that TND, will be coming to council in the early part of 2010 and is the legal framework then for this project going forward. And what I want to stress is that work has been continuing and will be ready for action early next year. In fact, that zoning must be in place for this project to move forward. I want to bring to the attention of council and also the public there is a very important new issue of timing, which the new council is going to have to address early in the new year, but it's worth beginning to think about now. Simply put, this project as a whole is going to go through a normal process taking well over a year. I think we all know that from other projects I want to say similar size but complex projects. Newtown Station is probably our most recent example. The current State Store location on Center is currently on a month-to-month lease, we are told. The current plan reviewed last night proposes demolishing the current State Store location and moving it to the location on South State Street. Mr. Smith is requesting Borough Council to consider very seriously their interest, and therefore the borough's interest, in retaining the State Store in the borough as a retail location, which is of benefit to the downtown business district, and whether it should be a priority in future plans. Why is that question posed now for the new council? It's being posed because if the answer is yes, that the borough through council wants it to be a priority, wants the State Store to stay in the borough, then what Mr. Smith is not only asking but telling the borough is that there would have to be an accelerated process just for the State Store. That is to say, to split it off from the overall project and have approvals for it earlier than the rest of the project. Now, from a planning standpoint, there was general agreement last night that that can be done. It can be split off from the project, and it can take a faster track, but it's not worth doing that unless Borough Council sees it as a priority and wants to do that. It's important to accelerate it because the LCB, which governs and controls the State Store locations, will not wait for this project to be completed in its entirety, and therefore to move the State Store to that new location. So what Mr. Smith is saying very bluntly is that if the council wants to keep the State Store, then that would require an accelerated process, and he would like to know that sooner or later. That's a decision to be made by the council in January, but will be posed to them pretty early at their first business meeting, but I raise it now so the new members are aware of it, and certainly the public is aware of it. And the public, I'm sure, wants to weigh in on whether or not it's something that the borough wants to do as well, to keep the State Store. But if the decision is yes, that we want to keep it, then the accelerated process will allow the LCB to know that the store will be ready by a particular date, and the borough will do all that's necessary to move it forward to accomplish that as possible. Aside from that, the Planning Commission has rescheduled its regular January meeting from January 4th to January 11th, and that's it.
I'm just for my own information and the public's, I'm not clear on why the LCB would want an accelerated approval for the State Store and what happens if it's not given. And assuming that there was no project and no status quo, are we to assume from that that the State Store would be looking to move anyway?
Yes, that's the understanding. And to go back to your first question, they're on a month-to-month now, so pretty much the options are open to the LCB. They could go to Newtown Township. They could go, within a certain defined radius from the current location easily. And what Alan Smith is saying, and what he said to the Planning Commission last night was, look, I can furnish a very nice new retail location on State Street, on South State Street, but it can't await completion of the overall project because of the complexities. That's going to take much longer. So he's posing a question to us: if you're interested in keeping the State Store in the borough, then you'd have to show a commitment to seeing that as a standalone, go through an approval process and be done before the overall project. So it's certainly technically and from a planning standpoint possible. The question for council is, does council want to do it? Is the priority of keeping that store, that retail location in the borough, important enough that we would entertain splitting it off and giving it earlier approvals than we would otherwise for the whole project?
We know that we'll get a commitment from the LCB if we give them a commitment.
That's a good question. Yeah, we're not the ones who get the commitment.
Right.
What Alan Smith said last night was, look, if there's a decision made by this governing body next year, early on, to say, we'd like to keep the State Store, and we say to Alan Smith, we're okay with splitting it off, so get your plans together, come on in. We're going to take that as a standalone, as an isolated part of this, and we're going to move that ahead separately and have the approvals in place. To your question, Bob, then the LCB has that information, can look ahead to a date we all have to agree on, and understand that on or about they'd be able to go into their new store.
Okay.